Hello and welcome, I'm Olas Garjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. Relatives of the victims of flight MH17 have filed a class action lawsuit against the Russian Federation and Russian President Vladimir Putin. As a reminder, the MH17 airplane that was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was shut down on July 17, 2014 and fell from the sky in areas of the Donetsk region under control of Russian hybrid forces. All 298 passengers and crew on board died. The joint investigation team confirmed that Russia is responsible for the catastrophe as the MH17 plane was shot with the Russian-made BUK missile. To talk more about the ongoing investigation process, we welcome to our studio today Kateryna Busol, lawyer at Global Rights Compliance. Hello and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So this joint efforts for the class action lawsuit against the Russian Federation and Russian President Vladimir Putin, how does this strengthen the position of relatives in court?
Well, it's not uncommon for the applicants to unite in a suit against a certain state. So, for instance, in a case of a known Beslan tragedy of the shooting of the Russian school and of the so-called anti-terrorist operation, there were more than 400 applicants. So this is not uncommon. I would say that what strengthens any case is the quality of evidence, of course. And it should be understandable that the victims of the MH17 tragedy, they're pursuing just different avenues for justice. So we know about domestic investigation which will take place in the Netherlands, and domestic proceedings that are catalyzed by the joint investigative team, which is composed of the representatives of 5 nations. But here we see just another avenue of justice, and the quality of evidence that they submit will be the main factor for the success of the case.
We're going to speak about the evidence shortly, but speaking of this recent lawsuit, how many people total are included in it, and how many victims do they represent?
As I understand from the public media reports, it's about 300 victims. It was 290 something. So I think the American lawyer who is submitting the case, so he started. Yeah, I think he started with 16 people, and then other victims, family members of the victims joined. So there are almost 300 people. Yeah.
Well, speaking of evidence, in May 2018, the joint investigation team, which includes representatives from Australia, Belgium, Malaysia, the Netherlands and Ukraine, provided additional evidence of Russia's key role in this crash. In your opinion, what evidence from the investigation seems undeniable, and what is the latest?
Well, we should understand that the materials of any investigation, pre-trial investigation, they're secret. And of course, the members of the investigative team, they make public only those materials which can be made public. So, of course, they do have quite a reliable and impressive evidence as regards the movement of the BUK missile, as regards who launched it, as regards the intercepted communications. But I would say, just from my legal practice, and I think just from the common sense, the viewers would understand that the majority of evidence is, as of now, behind the screens. It's inaccessible to the public. So in these complex investigations, usually, the information about the specific movement of weaponry of the missile is important. The chain of command is important if we want to hold accountable the top military or civilian officials for launching a missile. So any documentary, physical, forensic evidence that could prove that, intercepted communications, it will be useful. I think we'll just know more as soon as the proceedings start, because so far it's just what can be allowed for the public.
Yes, I understand. Well, so far the head of the Dutch Foreign Ministry said that the Russian Federation has refused to start negotiation on possible compensation for the families, right? This lawsuit, as we said, was about $330 million. So the government is considering possible next steps. And what additional measures could be taken if they mention these next steps?
Well, first we should understand that shortly after the MH17 was shot down, the UN Security Council adopted the resolution that bound all states to cooperate and to help the investigation in the case. So Russia is itself bound by the resolution that it supported in the UN Security Council to help with evidence. Russia has a very particular attitude and relations with the ECHR, with the European Court of Human Rights, as we know, because after the huge judgment in the UK's case, when the court obliged Russia to pay, I think it was about 2 billion euros damages for making the UK's intentionally bankrupt. Russia adopted a law saying that if the judgments of the court contravene their constitutional law, they can, not be bound by the judgments of the court. So in a way, under their domestic legislation, they can have, this excuse basically not to comply with the decisions, with the judgments that do not meet their constitutional threshold, their constitutional norms. But on the other hand, of course, we understand that it is an international treaty that cannot be modified unilaterally. Yes, the judgment in this case will be very impactful. It will catalyze the domestic proceedings in the Netherlands, and we'll see, the argument of the lawyer representing the victims in this particular case is that he hopes for more sanctions with respect to Russia. So we should understand that even if Russia does not comply with the judgments and does not pay damages, if any are assigned on the basis of the judgment, we hope that other effects of the case will be even more effective, such as sanctions.
So if Russia doesn't really respect the sentences of ECHR, could possibly some other court handle the case?
If Russia doesn't
respect the sentence of ECHR and the process in ECHR?
Well, there are a number of options. When a state does not comply with the rulings of the court, there is a possibility to freeze the assets, to freeze some state property, but it remains to be seen. So there are avenues like that. It can be part of the sanctions regime as well.
But how would you rate the likelihood that the Netherlands will apply against Russia in an international court in The Hague?
When we speak about international courts, we should speak first about the jurisdiction, who can sue against whom and about what particular cases. There is currently no court in The Hague, like an international criminal court does not accept states versus states complaint. Well, there can be state referrals, but this is different. So Netherlands cannot sue Russia like that. They're pursuing their domestic investigations in the domestic Dutch court, and there's also this separate suit on behalf of the victims in the ECHR. But so far, no other avenues for Netherlands to sue Russia directly, no.
So speaking of this joint investigation team, what are the versions of possible deeper investigation of this case?
Well, we should first, I think, be glad that it is composed of such nations as Australia, Belgium, the Netherlands, Malaysia and Ukraine. They have quite a formalized cooperation. They've got the legal assistance treaty. They have recently signed the Memorandum of Understanding as regards the financial oversight mechanism, and they cooperate quite closely. Plus, the Holland as such is known as the country of international justice, which respects the rule of law. So we hope that any proceedings, especially in such a high-profile case, will be conducted on pursuant to the top standards of the rule of law. First, second, so far from what we have seen, the reports of the of investigators also show that they have made quite a big progress in terms of evidence collection, in terms of the lack of access, especially to the certain territories in eastern Ukraine. So it all looks promising, but I think we should just see when the actual court proceedings start and when we see more public materials seen, revealed to the public.
Do we know when the proceeding will start?
Not that I'm aware about it. I don't think so.
Understood. So if we compare this case with the similar cases that happen in history, you see this one as a prospective lawsuit?
Well, for instance, the lawyer who currently represents the victims of the MH17 shutdown, he was also involved in the so-called Lockerbie case, when the Libyan government allegedly shot down a plane over Scotland. But then the huge sanctions were imposed on Libya, but the case was not adjudicated. It did not get to that stage because the Libyan government agreed to pay compensation to the victims. So in the direct area of air law, I wouldn't say that we have these direct analogies. So we'll see how it goes with the ECHR.
Well, Dutch chief prosecutor said that his office has identified 100 persons of interest to the investigation, including those who organized the delivery of that missile to the occupied territory of Ukraine. So what could force Putin possibly to extradite these suspects if they are proven guilty?
I think the seriousness of evidence, because, well, as I said, in such complex cases, the chain of command is important. And I think if the Russian authorities, especially the top authorities, feel the threat that the evidence might lead to them, they might be more willing to extradite this so-called lower fish or small fish, as it's called in international jurisprudence, so lower perpetrators or mid-level perpetrators.
Just to get rid of their responsibility.
Yes, in a way so, because, well, you know, of course, ideally one would aim to top commanders, you know, those are usually like ministers of defense or even heads of states who cannot, you know, remain unaware about such decisions that are made on the ground, like shooting of the civilian aircraft. But yes, it's quite hard to prove, and I think the practice of the International Criminal Court currently shows with their acquittals that it's really hard to prove the responsibility of a head of state or ex-head of state. Therefore,
such a serious claim.
Yes, yes. Therefore, they might be more willing to extradite this mid or low-level perpetrators. But again, it fully depends on the quality of evidence and how well the chain of command is proven.
This is a very interesting comment. Unfortunately, we have to conclude the conversation because we're running out of time. But for the final question, do you have any approximate forecast? How long can this process last?
I cannot say so. I think they're about... Oh, sorry, I just really cannot estimate.
Usually it's 40 years,
because
probably.
Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, these are the countries that have the highest number of cases against them.
And it's very unpredictable.
And it's hard to predict, yeah, when the court will handle this particular case. But it's very high profile, so let's hope that the court will handle it as soon as possible.
Well, thank you so much for your clear and very interesting comments, and thank you for being a guest today in our studio.
Thank you.
That was Kateryna Busol, lawyer at Global Rights Compliance. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Ales Garjuk. Goodbye.